name is Crismeldy.
And I'm Shanika. And tonight we'll be talking to you about the organizational life cycle.
We will start by describing what organizational life cycle is, also the uses and successes it has, and what applications organizational life cycle has in today's organizations.
Also, we'll be talking to you about the types of transaction costs that flows through the stages of the organizational life cycle. Also, how the organizational life cycle operates within the corporations such as the entrepreneurship, as well as our recommendation and conclusions.
But let's start by describing what organizational life cycle is. Every company has to go through stages before they achieve their success. This model explains that organizational life cycle has 5 stages. Startup, then we have survival, success, renewal, and then decline. Let's look a little bit further in what startup looks like. The stage of startup marks the beginning of organizational development. The focus is on identifying a sufficient number of customers to support the existence of the organization. Organizations in this stage tend to ask questions or create their own environment, decide whether they are marketing driven or brand driven, and find what differentiates their products from others. Stage of survival. An organization moves into survival stage, they seek to grow, develop some formalization of structure, and establish their own distinctive competencies. Goals are formulated routinely in this stage, with the primary goal being the generation of enough revenue to continue operations and staying competitive. Stage of success, also called maturity. The success stage represents an organizational form where formalization and control through bureaucracy are the norm. In this stage, job descriptions, policies, and procedures become formal. These organizations have passed the survival stage, growing to a point that they may seek to protect what they have gained instead of targeting new territory. Stage 4. This stage refers to the desire to return to the learning time in the organization, in which innovation and creativity was the primary goal and teamwork was being developed. The creativity is sometimes offered by the use of matrix structure, and decision making is very decentralized. The organization is still large and bureaucratic, but members are encouraged to work without adding to this structure. The decline stage is characterized by politics and power, as organizational members become more concerned with personal goals than they are with organizational goals. For some organizations, the inability to meet the external demands of the previous stage has led them to a period of decline where they experience a lack of profit and a loss of market share. As the organization moves through the developmental stages, changes in the nature and number of requirements, opportunities, and threats may cause the need for change in the business organization. Companies' managers must change its business goals, strategies, and strategy implementation to fit the internal and external business. To avoid declining, companies can take a wide number of actions during the success and declining stages by focusing on product or service positions and implementing new methods of attracting and retaining customers. The last 3 stages tend to have different results when organizations work for the future from the first 2 stages, and they are able to break business habits when they cease to be fruitful. Now, let's go back with my partner Shanika and more about organizational life cycle.
Now let's talk to you about the types of transaction costs that flows through the organizational life cycle. The stages of the organizational life cycle are linked thoroughly to the organizational structure as well as its nature and also the sizes of the transaction costs. The transaction costs are very vital to the organizational structure because they complement the activities that occur within the stages of the organizational life cycle. Now, let's take a look at the transaction cost economics. Recently, the transaction cost economics have been recognized to be a vital topic within the organization. The reason for this is that the transaction cost economics addresses and focuses on questions such as 1. Why the organization and the company exist from the beginning. 2. How do organizations determine their boundaries and limitations? 3. How an organization is to govern operations. Researchers have identified two major transaction costs that occurs during the stages of the organizational life cycle. One, we have the external cost, and two, the internal cost. The external costs are referred to as 1. The cost of negotiating and concluding contracts. 2. The cost of search and processing external information. And 3. The cost to avoid opportunistic behavior. Next, we have the internal cost, which is referred to as the cost of collection, the cost of storage and analysis of internal information, the cost of coordination, the cost of control, and finally the cost to avoid opportunistic behavior internally. Corporate entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship at the organizational level, which means it is common to growing or mature organizations. Research have shown that corporate entrepreneurship continuously grows during 3 stages of the organizational life cycle: startup, growth, and maturity. Corporate entrepreneurship is based on 3 characteristics: innovation, strategic objectives, and potential for growth. However, these are influenced by entrepreneurship culture, managerial practices, and managers' attitude towards the organization. Based on a one-way ANOVA test results, it showed that organizations mostly focus on increasing potential growth, which yield 17.8%, followed by innovation, which is 17.3%, and lastly, strategic objectives, which is 10.6%.
We reached to the end of our presentation, and we have a few conclusions and recommendations that we would like to share. We learned throughout the paper that every company is pursuing to achieve growth. In order to accomplish this growth, we need to understand what are the strategies that will help us get there. The strategies are perfectly defined when we understand what stage the company is in. We mentioned throughout the paper that there are 5 stages. As managers, when we have the knowledge of the stage the company is in, we can define the perfect course of action to follow to achieve this growth. We have 5 stages that can be summarized in 3 steps: evaluating the company, learning from this evaluation, and then adjusting. Again, evaluate, learn, adjust. We will go with my partner Shanika that will mention other recommendations.
Thank you, Chris. Further down in our studies, we have realized that it is important for management to analyze these costs that influence the stage of the cycle. 1, because it will allow them to see the effectiveness of the organization, and 2, it also allows them to see the different bottom effects that may affect the organization. And once they have done that, then they will be able to take the necessary measures in order to maintain their growth. And now, further back to our questions.
We have a couple of questions for future research. Our first question is, are there any sub-stages between the 5 stages that we learned from organizational life cycle? What we mean is, we have startup, our first stage, then we have survival. Is there any stage that goes in between those 2 that we don't know about? That is our first question. Our second question will be, does the industry condition affect the stages the company is in? Is the industry a portal to make a company grow faster or lower? And what influence does it have in organizational life cycle? And our third and last question is, does the board of directors, the managers, and the departments of the company are defined with these stages? Or we have the structure since the beginning to the end? These are our recommendations. Thank you for paying attention to our paper. We hope you enjoy.
No,
Let's
no.
start. Success. Then we have the stage. We have in this model are startup. Then we have survival. We also have success.
Man, she can know.
What did she do? The top of the curve. Then we have renewal.
Organizational life cycle stages. Flows. Oh, I missed that. It is linked to the nature of the organization and